Okay, we're going to get started. I hope everybody can see my screen. Can I get a thumbs up if folks can see my screen? Great. That's exciting. That means that we're going to be people are going to be able to share this. So my name is Bradley. I introduced Eric Gage from Permit Sonoma, who is also going to be helping us with the presentation. And we are really excited to have you all here tonight. I want to cover some ground rules as we get started. We've got a lot of folks here. We've already got 56 people joined, and people are still joining by the minute. So that being the case, we want to share some ground rules that we're going to have with everybody. The first one is respect. We really want people to treat each other with respect and make sure that we are hearing from everybody and that we know that we have different thoughts and opinions. And so what we really want to do is make sure that we're treating everybody's opinions with respect. Be here, we are only really able to hear from you and to incorporate your feedback into the housing element if while you're here, you're interacting with us, you're helping us know about the challenges and opportunities that we face here in Sonoma County. What I would say is, we all have different experiences and perspectives. We owe it all to each other to really learn from each other. So with that, we're going to be asking everybody to, step up or step back. So if you're a person like me who is a sharer, a volunteer, we've got a lot of people tonight. So we're going to ask you to really think, is this one of the best nuggets that I have about housing before sharing it, right? We want your best and the most important things you have to share. If you're somebody that is, the converse, a little more reticent to share and participate, a little bit more shy, we're asking you to step outside of your comfort zone a little bit and to share with us more than you normally would, because that's how we're going to hear from everybody and really make this the best meeting possible. We also are going to ask people to raise your hand for questions or to speak. That's going to really help in the groups to manage that. You have a reactions button in the bottom of your toolbar. That's where you can hit the raise your hand button. If that's not working for you and you've got your video on, you can just wave your hand and somebody will see you. You can also type things into the chat and we will try to keep up with that as best we can. So with that, and one last thing, we've got, it looks like 66 people and a lot to get through. So the more concise you can be in expressing your thoughts, the better we're going to be in terms of making sure that we hear everybody, get to cover everything. And so we'd really appreciate that as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Eric Gage, who is the project manager for Permit Sonoma's housing element effort.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm going to be laying out some fundamentals on housing elements in the process. Next slide, Brad. The housing element is a chapter out of every general plan, the guiding planning document for the county that looks at housing only in the unincorporated county. It outlines goals, objectives, and policies, and it is updated on the 8-year cycle. Slide. One more.
Sorry.
No problem. To qualify this process, the county doesn't build the housing itself. It establishes the policies and regulations that facilitate the development of housing by private builders. There are a number of state mandated requirements the county has to address through the housing element update process, including what's referred to as the Regional Housing Needs Allocation, the RHNA, as we frequently call it, and Fair Housing Assessment. Slide. The RHNA the regional housing needs allocation is a target number of homes assigned by state and regional governments to each city and county in the state of California. That's also implemented on an 8-year cycle, and it identifies not only the number of dwellings, homes that need to be built by each individual jurisdiction, but also they're divided into income categories based on county averages, such as very low, low, moderate, etc. Slide. So as I referred to earlier, there are a number of state mandated requirements that are included in the process. One of them is that the county make a diligent effort to include all economic segments of the community in the update process. It also needs to clearly document the implementation of the housing element and describe ongoing community engagement through implementation. Slide. The housing element must also identify the people and groups that were invited to participate, which ones did in fact participate, their general comments, and how comments were incorporated into the final document. And it will also describe the ongoing engagement of the public and stakeholders during the housing element cycle when it's being implemented. Slide. And now I'll turn it over to Bradley to introduce these breakout questions.
So as we kind of go through, we're going to be talking about several different breakout questions. So the first of those questions is, what is the most important features of a neighborhood that you'd like to live in? The second question is going to be, are there features that you don't want to have nearby your home? The third question is, what kind of housing should be built to support those communities? And then our fourth question is, what would be the biggest challenges to achieving that housing that supports those communities, both in the near term and over the next 10 years? And then finally, we are going to be asking, what else would you like us to know about housing in your community? So I am just finishing setting up the breakout rooms. So I'm going to be sending people to those breakout rooms momentarily. And so we are really excited to hear from you in a little bit more detail. So thank you so much. And I will be opening the rooms now. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the main room. We're going to have a little bit of a report back session and then next steps. So thank you so much for being here this evening. Our different hosts in the different breakout rooms are going to be sharing a little bit, just kind of the highlights of what we had in that room. So I'm going to start out. So the most, people really in my group talked about the importance of using our tools to create intentional community. That really was something that folks really talked a lot about, the needs for things like community gardens, tiny home villages, different ways that we could make people feel connected to each other in the housing that we build. We also talked a lot about infill kind of housing above like shops kind of development that people talked about, and the need for us to really focus on improving Sonoma County's transit before we build and where we build, so that people have options to get to services that we needed to be to. In terms of places that people wanted to avoid, there was a lot of discussion about how to make sure that we aren't over gridlocking small towns and communities and making them not feel like small towns anymore. And thinking about our natural resources like water and working to address wildfire in where we build. So that's the first, my group's report out. So first we're going to have Eric, and then we're going to have Will do reporting out. And again, just a minute per person, please.
Sure, thanks, Bradley. I think that initially we talked a lot about infrastructure and limitations of infrastructure in rural areas and denser residential located where services are already available. There was a concern expressed about vacation rentals, part-time residents, vacant homes, and how those contribute to a decreasing housing stock for long-term renters and workforce housing. There was some discussion on challenges that was really interesting. We talked about some of the things that people are concerned about over time. Traffic is always something that comes up, but additional to that, there were concerns about the cumbersome permitting process and what could be done to streamline it. Also, climate change is a long-term challenge, an obstacle when considering our natural resources, water availability, and fire risk. We also talked about construction costs and ways to facilitate development of small units in rural areas, such as manufactured homes. We identified CEQA as potentially a weapon against affordable housing development, and considering other design standards that might be prohibitive for affordable or high density residential.
Okay, so we've got Adam next and then Christina.
Sure, I can hit some of the highlights from my group, and potentially some of the different ones. I won't belabor some of the points that have been brought up. Definitely the affordability concerns and diversity of ages and economic backgrounds in the housing that we emphasize in this housing element, and also the diversity of amenities and uses. So not having just necessarily housing existing on its own, but using housing as a way to create community, to bring those diversity of ages, economic backgrounds, all together to create stronger communities. It was also brought up to think about innovative ways to create forms of housing, whether that's spaces for mobile homes, RVs, tiny homes, and also thinking about innovative technologies, new technologies that haven't been emphasized before. Composting toilets is one, looking at kind of onerous septic system requirements that are around. So looking at new technologies. Also the question of homelessness and really the bottom 20% of the economic spectrum was brought up as an important consideration. Also the permitting process was also brought up as looking at streamlining, and also looking potentially with things like ADUs and infill housing as a very important component, but then also again with the innovation to look at potentially are there ways to think about having either pre-approved plans, prefab construction components yeah, the innovation was a real big component of the discussion, but lively discussion, and thanks for everyone for chiming in.
Great. So we have Christina, and then we'll go to Will.
Hi. So a lot of what's been said was very, we talked about that too. One of the things I want to bring up especially though was the talk about the walkability and the visibility of towns, making sure that we support locals and not just tourists. Also, a lot of talk was about innovative housing too, like mixed use, multi-family, generational housing. There was, I thought, really cool discussion about like prefab and modular building. And there was also the talk about how we need to streamline our permitting service because that can hinder, affordable housing and developers building affordable housing. So I know I missed a lot, but it was such an incredible talk. So thank you everyone for participating again.
Awesome. So I think we have Will, and then we'll do Fernando.
Sure. Yeah, and just to echo some of the thoughts that have been coming up so far, infrastructure was a key component of most of our discussion. And one of the highlights is that good infrastructure should preclude the development because we don't want to overwhelm city roads in case of an emergency or roads that weren't originally designed to handle density. And then another thing was creating community through putting together of different kinds of housing situations and solutions so that people of all incomes were living together and had access to the public resources such as transit, commercial areas, et cetera. And then another good comment was just how are we going to address the housing element in the times of environmental uncertainty that we have coming and that we're living in. So water was a very hot topic for going through our discussions. So, but again, thank you to everyone for contributing. That was a great talk.
Awesome. So we're going to do Fernando and then Katrina. Fernando, we can't hear you.
Okay, sorry. I echo all the comments that have been said and from the other group, but to add to those comments and some of the things that we have to remember, the economic aspect of Sonoma County, the agricultural and tourism, that we cannot forget those aspects that have to be maintained, and the affordability of the houses for locals, and because sometimes corporations will build, we don't need 1,000 luxury homes, we need 1,000 homes affordable. And we talk about the water also and different type of septic system, more innovative forms of for septic. And yeah, I have so many notes, but anyway, it's very similar to all the comments in the other group.
Awesome. So then we, I believe, have Katrina and then Ross to take us home.
Thanks, Bradley, and thank you to everybody that was in my group. It was a really great conversation, and you all had really excellent points that I hadn't thought about before. So just to talk about things that haven't been discussed or that weren't discussed in other groups, we talked a lot about the need for providing workforce housing within the county, and the balance of jobs and housing, and how we need economic opportunities in certain areas. We talked about the quality of construction of affordable housing units or lower income housing units, and how those should be built up to the same quality as market rate units. We talked about supporting a wider diversity of housing types, and especially when it comes to construction. So whether that's prefab, modular, and somebody earlier had mentioned innovation, and so the need for the county to allow for all sorts of technologies was a conversation. We also, again, talked about streamlined approval process, creating more certainty for developers and in the permitting process overall. Something that came up a few times was a vacancy tax as an option to prevent second homes from sitting there and not being used and to support housing within the community. And then we had a great discussion about displacement and how the housing element should focus on displacement of people that currently live in the county but can no longer afford to have housing here, and that we should focus on the current housing stock as well, including rehabilitation of units and subsidizing units that have subsidies that might expire.
And Ross, to take us home.
Yeah, thank you to my group, and thank you all for joining us tonight. Just a couple of the points that I think weren't discussed. I mean, our group did hit on a lot of the ideas of focusing development within cities and urbanized areas. Access to transit is very important. We also discussed building in WUIs, so wildlife urban interface areas and state responsibility areas should be avoided. We talked about building mixes of housing for different economic backgrounds. I know I heard that come up, but that was something that was important to our group, and making sure that ADA is something that is incorporated into design for new housing. Let's see, we talked a little bit about vacation rentals too, and vacancy rates. I did hear that from Katrina's group. And we talked about reviewing our urban growth boundaries. That was something that I haven't heard from the other groups. So urban growth boundaries around cities, and the unincorporated county. And then we talked about where housing is located and how low-income housing communities are located near freeways, and disadvantaged communities anyway, I think that's about all our time. But yeah, I wanted to say thank you again to everyone for joining us. Your feedback is appreciated, and we hope to continue hearing from you in the future.
So I'm going to share my screen for just one moment, and I know we're running a couple of minutes over, so I will make this quick. So I just wanted to let you all know about next steps. So we are in the process of our stakeholder outreach. We're going to be writing the text over the next couple months, and then we're going to have text publication, review, and revision. And then it'll go to the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors for adoption by January of 2023. And we will continue to involve the public in all aspects of this process. We are just so thankful for everyone that decided to come out today or on Saturday. There were 90 people here at one point, which is outstanding. And, there were, so close to 150 people for the 2 days, which for long range planning is really great and shows how important housing is to this county. And we're just so thankful for you all to share with us, because that really allows us to learn from you and to make this housing element better and reflective of Sonoma County values. So we couldn't do it without you. So thank you so much for your time this evening. You will, if you participated in either day, get an email with a survey about how we did in the facilitation, asking relevant questions, making sure that your voice was heard. So we'd really appreciate your feedback on that so that we can improve our public participation program, in addition to the feedback that you gave us to help us improve our housing element. So thank you so much for your time this evening. And we really appreciate everybody that was able to join us. So with that, we're going to say good night.